They laugh. They overlook you. They speak to you like you don't matter. And the world, in quiet agreement, echoes their dismissal. You feel it in boardrooms, in classrooms, in the silent glances of people who think they've already figured you out. "You're not a threat," they whisper with their eyes. And maybe they're right. Maybe you're not yet. But Nietzsche would smile here, because this is where it begins. He once said, "Invisible threads are the strongest ties. Let them pull the visible strings. Let them talk loud. You operate in the silence." See, the world teaches you that to be powerful, you must be loud, assertive, seen. But Nietzsche flipped that logic upside down. He believed the true strength comes from knowing and choosing when to be seen, to not throw every card on the table, to hide in plain sight. You've been trained to chase validation, to correct others' assumptions, to shout, "You're wrong about me." But what if them being wrong is your greatest gift? Because when they underestimate you, they're distracted. When they ignore you, they're unguarded. And when they dismiss you, they give you space. Space to think, space to grow, space to plan. In a world full of noise, the quiet ones are the most dangerous. Why? Because no one sees them coming. You've seen this happen. The student everyone ignored becomes the entrepreneur no one can ignore. The quiet colleague gets the promotion without the politics. The artist laughed at sells out their gallery while the critics are still talking. Nietzsche understood that life isn't fair. It doesn't reward the loudest, it rewards the most strategic, the ones who don't need applause to move forward, the ones who grow roots while others grow opinions. Let them misjudge you. Let them mistake your kindness for weakness. Let them confuse your silence for absence, because all the while, you're watching, learning, becoming. There is immense power in restraint, in not proving yourself, in letting them write their own version of you, while you quietly write your future. They want to define you. Let them. Because when the moment comes, when the mask drops, they'll realize they weren't looking at weakness. They were looking at someone who chose not to flex power prematurely. This is Nietzsche's game. The art of letting people build your disguise for you. The art of hiding the lion in the skin of a lamb. And here's the part they never see coming. The underestimated one has no ceiling, no pressure, no expectations to fulfill, only surprises to deliver. So next time someone looks past you, smile. Because in that moment, they've given you an advantage they don't even understand. And as you walk through this world quiet and alert, remember, they're building castles of ego. You're building something far more dangerous, an identity they'll never see coming. And when the day comes and you decide to rise, you won't need to announce it. Your presence will do all the talking. You're in the room, but somehow you're not. You speak, but your words evaporate like steam in winter air. You try to contribute, but the conversation flows right around you like a river dodging a stone. It's not always obvious. No one screams, "You don't matter." But the message is there, in the pauses that never invite you in, the glances that pass over you, the promotions you didn't get, the invitations that never came. It's subtle, it's quiet, but it cuts deep. Carl Jung once said, "Loneliness does not come from being alone, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you." That's the pain, isn't it? Not just being unseen, but feeling like you could scream your truth and the world would still shrug. You start to question yourself. Maybe I'm not interesting enough. Maybe I'm not talented enough. Maybe I'm just average. And so you shrink. You water yourself down. You try to be agreeable, inoffensive, easy to be around. You silence your edge, your fire, your complexity. You become the version of yourself you think will finally be accepted. But here's the irony. The more invisible you feel, the more you try to please, and the more you try to please, the more invisible you become. Why? Because true presence, true power, comes not from fitting in, but from standing in your truth. Montaigne once observed, "The greatest thing in the world is to know how to belong to oneself. When you belong to everyone, when your identity shifts with every environment, you become no one. This is where the pain of being unseen becomes a gift, because it forces a question most people never ask. Who am I when no one is watching?" In the silence of neglect, in the loneliness of being overlooked, you're faced with a terrifying and beautiful opportunity to meet yourself, to see who you are when you're not being applauded, not being chosen, not being validated. And that's where the turning point begins. You realize that you can't beg your way into worth. You can't hustle your way into belonging. You can't shape-shift your way into love. What you can do is choose to be seen by the person who matters most, you. To stop waiting, to stop chasing, to stop living like your existence needs a stamp of approval. This doesn't mean closing yourself off. It doesn't mean bitterness or revenge. It means sovereignty. It means clarity. It means returning to your core and anchoring yourself there so deeply that no rejection can shake it loose. Because here's the truth. Some people will never see you. Not because you're not worth seeing, but because they're not capable of perceiving your depth. And that's not your fault. It's not your burden to fix. It's your invitation to rise. The moment you stop twisting yourself into shapes to be accepted, that's when you start standing tall. The moment you stop chasing attention, that's when your energy becomes magnetic. The moment you accept your own value, that's when you start attracting people who aren't afraid of your fullness. Jung believed that true individuation happens when you integrate the shadow, the rejected, denied, abandoned parts of yourself, and make peace with them. You don't heal from invisibility by becoming louder. You heal by becoming whole. So, yes, being overlooked hurts. It's a slow, invisible ache. But it's also a mirror reflecting back a deeper question. Will you define yourself or let others define you by their inability to see? That question, that's the pivot. That's where everything starts to shift, but only if you're ready to stop begging to be chosen and start choosing yourself. You've been taught to speak softly, to wait your turn, to not make waves. But tell me, has it worked? Has playing small ever saved you? Has silence ever earned you respect? Or have you just been overlooked again? See, Nietzsche didn't believe power lived in noise. He believed real power, terrifying, unshakable power lived in presence, in the calm of someone who doesn't need to explain themselves, in the quiet defiance of someone who refuses to play weak. Power, he said, isn't given. It's taken, but not through aggression, through clarity, through stillness, through a refusal to betray yourself for comfort. Because weakness is not silence. Weakness is silencing yourself to make others feel comfortable. They taught you to be the nice one, to downplay your brilliance, to smile through discomfort, to stay agreeable even when your soul screamed no. But what if your silence was never respect? It was fear. Fear of being too much. Fear of being rejected. Fear of stepping into the force you really are. Nietzsche called it the will to power. Not domination, but the deep, internal drive to rise above limitations and live from your core self, not the role society handed you. That version of you, the one who bites their tongue, nods politely, lets disrespect slide, that version isn't noble, it's just familiar, it's just trained. But here's the shift: awareness. The moment you realize you've been complicit in your own silencing, you get to make a choice: stay comfortable, stay small, or burn the script that told you silence equals goodness. Nietzsche wasn't telling you to become loud, he was telling you to become undeniable. There's a difference. People who shout for attention often lack real power, but the ones who walk into a room and say nothing, yet change the energy by existing, they've claimed something deeper. They've stopped seeking permission. They've stopped apologizing for their strength. They've stopped asking the world to approve their presence. Because the world doesn't respect weakness disguised as kindness. It respects people who know their worth so deeply they no longer perform it. And that means becoming someone who can sit in silence, unshaken. Someone who doesn't flinch at rejection. Someone who knows the ones who misunderstand your depth were never meant to reach it. You don't need to prove anything. You need to embody everything you already are. Let them underestimate you. Let them project their limits on you. Let them think silence means surrender, because silence, when chosen, is power. And maybe for the first time, you don't need to fight for space. You become the space. And in that stillness, in that refusal to shrink, you begin to attract exactly what you used to chase. But only when you stop performing, only when you stop begging to be understood, only when you start living like your power doesn't need validation. So here's a quiet truth Nietzsche might whisper: you have your way, I have my way. As for the right way, the correct way, and the only way, it does not exist. The world doesn't need more agreeable souls. It needs more grounded ones, people who've stopped trading their essence for acceptance. So now, let me ask you, have you been quiet? Or have you been silenced? And if you knew the difference, what would you do with your voice now? They think you're harmless, too soft, too emotional, too nice. And that's exactly where your power begins. You see, when people underestimate you, they reveal something important. They're only seeing the surface and assuming it's all there is. But beneath that surface lives your strategy. Nietzsche once said, "He who despises himself still respects himself as one who despises." Translation: even those who pretend you're beneath them are unconsciously admitting you're worth measuring against. They just don't know you're not playing their game. You're playing your own. When the world expects nothing from you, you're free. Free to observe. Free to plan. Free to evolve in silence while they get distracted by their own ego. Let them believe you're weak. Let them misjudge you. Because while they laugh, while they dismiss, you grow. And here's the secret. Being underestimated gives you space to move without resistance. People don't block what they don't fear. So, while they're building defenses against obvious threats, they leave themselves wide open to the one they never saw coming, you. See, Nietzsche wasn't impressed by flashy strength. He admired quiet resilience, endurance, the ability to take insult and transform it into fuel. Because the real test isn't how loud you are, it's how deep your roots go when no one's watching. And when the storm hits, you're the one still standing because you never relied on appearances to begin with. But let's be clear, this isn't about playing small forever. It's about timing. A lion doesn't need to roar to prove it's dangerous. It watches, it waits, and when the moment comes, it strikes with precision. That's the energy we're channeling. You don't have to convince anyone of your worth. You don't have to argue with those who don't see you, because while they're distracted trying to win shallow battles, you're mastering the entire field. Nietzsche believed in the power of the individual to rise above expectations, not through begging for recognition, but through silent mastery. And here's what happens next. One day, they'll look again, and you won't be the same person they remember. You'll walk different, speak different, move with a clarity and confidence they can't explain, and they'll wonder how they missed it, how they missed you. That's not revenge, that's evolution. So don't waste your time trying to be seen. Use that time to sharpen your edge. Let your stillness build strength. Let their underestimation become your camouflage, because the most dangerous person in the room isn't the one making the most noise. It's the one who waited, watched, and learned how to strike with silence. Now ask yourself, if they see you as weak, are you willing to let them believe that just long enough to become unstoppable? Because Nietzsche would tell you, your greatest strength might just be hiding in what they refuse to take seriously. They didn't see you coming, and that's exactly how you planned it, because power isn't always loud. It doesn't need applause or recognition. Real power moves in silence. It grows in shadows. And when the moment arrives, it strikes with precision. You spent so long being overlooked, ignored, misjudged, and instead of breaking down, you built in silence. Instead of chasing attention, you studied the game. They thought your kindness meant weakness. They mistook your silence for submission. But what they failed to understand is that while they were focused on being seen, you were becoming unstoppable. This is the turning point. Niccolo Machiavelli once wrote, "A wise man ought always to follow the paths beaten by great men and to imitate those who have been supreme." But he also said something deeper, that it's often better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. What does that mean for you? It means that the moment you stop living to please, the moment you stop apologizing for taking up space, something changes. People begin to notice, not because you're louder, but because you're no longer shrinking. They sense a shift in your energy. Your boundaries get sharper. Your presence feels heavier. You're not asking for power, you're embodying it. Machiavelli never praised cruelty, but he understood necessity. He understood that sometimes, to protect your peace, to claim your voice, you have to stop playing small. And here's where the tables turn. When you've been underestimated long enough, you gain an advantage. No one's watching you closely. You're not a threat yet. And that's when you move, not to hurt, not to destroy, but to assert, to speak, to choose, to act in full alignment with your truth. And suddenly, you're not the same person they once ignored. Now, you walk with clarity. You speak without hesitation. You say no without guilt. because you've learned that true power isn't in controlling others, it's in mastering yourself. They'll say you've changed, and you have. You've stopped begging. You've stopped justifying. You've stopped making yourself smaller to keep other people comfortable, because now you know your strength was never in being nice. It was in being clear, director, focused. You're still kind, but no longer available for manipulation. You're still open, but not for everyone. You still give, but only to those who see your worth. And that shift, that's what scares them. Not because you're cruel, but because you finally learned how to move with intention. Machiavelli's philosophy isn't about heartlessness. It's about awareness, strategy, understanding the world as it is, not as we wish it to be. And the truth is, being underestimated is a gift. It gives you the freedom to prepare, to position, and when the moment is right, to move with clarity no one saw coming. So ask yourself, have you been playing small because it felt safe? Have you let others define your value because they were louder? Because the power shift doesn't start outside, it starts in a decision. Your decision to stop asking for permission. You've made it this far, and that says something. Because most people, they stop halfway. They get uncomfortable. They retreat the moment growth demands discomfort. But you stayed, you listened, and now you understand something deeper. Being underestimated isn't your weakness, it's your weapon. The truth is, we live in a world that rewards the loud, the flashy, the ones who scream their value before they've proven it. But you're not here to perform. You're here to evolve, to become, because there's a certain kind of power that doesn't need applause. It doesn't need to be announced. It just exists, solid, silent, certain. You've learned that your kindness must be sharp, not bitter, but boundaried. That love without self-respect is surrender, and being nice at the cost of your truth is not noble. It's self-erasure. Machiavelli never said to be cruel, but he said this: it is much safer to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. And now it makes sense. Because when you move through life trying to please everyone, you lose yourself. You become their version of you, not your own. But when you shift, when you stop explaining yourself, when you stop lowering your volume to make others comfortable, something profound happens. You stop attracting people who need you to shrink. You start drawing in those who recognize your stillness as strength. Those who see your silence as grounded, not submissive. You become magnetic, not because you're trying to be, but because you're not trying at all. And here's the paradox. The moment you stop seeking power, you become powerful. The moment you stop chasing respect, you command it. Not through force, but through presence, through clarity, through calm authority. Because true dominance isn't about being loud, it's about being undeniable. You're not here to prove. You're here to own, not to conquer others, but to lead yourself. That's what Machiavelli understood. That's what most never will. The path to influence isn't paved by performance. It's carved by self-mastery. So now we end where it began, with a question. But this one is different. This one is dangerous. This one is yours. Are you willing to appear small, quiet, humble, so that one day you'll rise without warning? Not to impress them, but to finally become who you were always meant to be.